We'll start with Helene St. James.
Hi, Steve. Uh, you're almost exactly 4 years in. How do you think it's gone overall?
Um, well, it's gone okay. I would love to be further ahead in the process. Again, as started out saying that 4 years ago, it's going to take time. We're going to have to be patient. We're trying to draft well. Try to accumulate more draft picks. We've been able to accumulate more draft picks. Time will tell if we've drafted well. That's the reality. It's just a slow process. So I would love to sit here and say I'm thrilled with where we're at and how things have gone through 4 seasons. There's been some. I've been pleased with some of the development of our draft prospects, and others are taking longer or haven't quite turned out at this point to what we had hoped. But that's okay. I fully believe in where we sit here today. I guess from 4 years ago, I'm not disappointed at where we're at. I guess I'm okay with it, but I intend to stick with the process, the plan. Nothing's going to dramatically change. We'll continue to look for opportunities, as I say repeatedly, to expedite the process. That is, is difficult to do, but we'll continue to do that. But so I guess 4 years in, I'm okay with where we're at. I'm hoping to see more improvement. We're starting to see some, this year. Last year we had Lucas and Moritz come in. This year we got games from, Berggren, Michael Rasmussen, who was drafted prior to me getting here, has taken on a bigger role. Joe Valeno's slowly increasing his role on the team or having a bigger impact on our team. So we're gradually moving some of the younger players in. So going back to it, I guess I'm okay with where we're at. I would, like all of you, I wish we were further ahead as well.
And just how do you plan to replace the offense you lost in Bertuzzi and Verana? And I know they didn't play a ton, but you had them earmarked coming into the season to be a huge part of the offense, and even Philip Roenick for that matter.
Yep. If Philip Zadina was out all year, we kind of had him factored in there to contribute to the offense. So, again, we'll look at the free agent market to potentially replace some of the offense. I hope within our own team we get more production out of some of our younger players that'll take on a bigger role. And I'm not necessarily looking for guys to go from 8-10 goals to 50. But if we can, take a guy from 8 or 9 goals that goes to 14 or 15, and everybody, just the younger guys, play a little bit bigger role and also contribute a little bit more on the offensive side, that will help. We'll look at free agency, but yeah, I look at, again, going back to the players that we moved at the deadline. Obviously, I knew at that time that there were going to be holes in our roster and prepared to deal with that. And truthfully, I might not be able to address all of those in this offseason. It might not be possible. Some of our young guys might not be ready, and players in free agency might not be available, but it's still things that had to be done, whether it was at the deadline or this coming offseason.
Lastly, just I know we only got to see Marco Kasper in one game, but both with him, and you spoke about Albert Johansson at the trade deadline. Are you thinking both could maybe push for jobs in Detroit next season, or?
Well, I sitting here today, or even next September in training camp, I like to believe young players, every player that in their off-season training, as they come to training camp, every player, regardless of whether they're invited or a first-round pick, they all have, in their heart that they're going to make the team. They have a hope, a drive that I'm going to play well enough. I'm going to show them enough that I have a chance to make the team. So today with those players, I wouldn't say absolutely not. They're destined for Grand Rapids or whatnot. They have a chance, but that'll be determined through training camp. Marco had, as you know, played all year in Sweden, came over and played one game, good, bad, indifferent. I don't want to assess him on that one game. He's a young guy, as with all of our younger players. I want them playing a lot, playing significant minutes, playing significant roles. So that will be determined after training camp. Albert was having a very good season in Grand Rapids, got injured, hasn't played. It's been quite a while, actually. He'll be fine. We expect him to be fully fine for next year. But certainly, as when we talked at the deadline, I'm not sure if his name was brought up specifically, but referenced as one of our guys that will, in all likelihood, if we need a D-man, particularly left shot D-man, that we'd see him up here. So prior to him getting hurt, we were really pleased, extremely pleased with his development. And, sitting here today, he hasn't played probably in 6 or 8 weeks, I think it is. So he has a chance. But, as you know, we have I'm pretty comfortable with the left side of our D. Simon's got work to do to crack the lineup as well. So, we'll figure it out. And those young guys are going to have to, push one of these guys out of the lineup.
Thanks, Steve.
Ted Kaufman.
Hey, Steve, thanks for doing this. What areas do you think you guys need to improve on going into next season, at least as you sit there right now?
Every area, Ted. I want to say, there was improvement. If we just look at, what did we win, 35 games versus 32 last year? I'd like to win more games next year. Our power play, I don't know where exactly. I probably should have looked at all this before getting on, but we're 20th or so on our power play, our penalty killing, as opposed to 30, 31, 32. We've improved in those areas. Our goals against overall has improved. Took a real hit here in the last couple of weeks. I'm not overly concerned about that. I'm not going to read a whole lot into that, what's gone on the last couple of weeks, but we improved in those areas. Obviously, it's not good enough. We got to score more in general as a team. And as I say, I may or may not be able to address that. What I'm really hoping on, and it might only be incremental, but our younger players all chipping in a little bit more, able to do more. Joe Valeno being able to contribute a little bit more. Philip Zadina, Lucas, all of our young guys, everybody chipping a little bit more. So again, it's not trying to be witty or anything, but we really need to get better in every area. We got to be a more physical team. We got to be a more competitive team, and that doesn't necessarily mean I got to go out and get somebody 6'6", 250 to go out and beat people up. You have to win puck battles. You have to block shots, win face-offs. All those little things make a team more competitive. We have to improve in all those areas.
Hey, first year on the job, how did you feel Derek did behind the bench?
Very well. He's an experienced guy. He's coached for a long time, been a head coach for a long time, been through a lot of it. Good 4 years as an assistant, albeit in Tampa, but he handled things very well. I think he has a good assessment of our team. I think, I mentioned those numbers. It's a big part of it is, the coaching staff with the organization, the way they wanted to do things. So I'm very pleased with the first year. And I think Derek would say, despite all his experience, or regardless of all the experience he has coaching, the first year behind the bench, actually in charge, he just learned a lot about, the daily, grind of coaching, or the organization, the preparation, the practices, the travel, all that. You just feel more comfortable after a year, and he's only going to continue to get better. But overall, I'm pleased with the atmosphere around the team. I'm pleased with the job the coaches did in preparing our team for games, having organization, and it was reflected in the way we played for the most part. And I'm not going to belabor it, but I'm sure the question will come up again. Post trade deadline, we traded players. We didn't bring players back in return for that, and we lost players to injury. So we took a huge hit. So the numbers beyond the trade deadline weren't necessarily reflective of the entire season.
Hey, quick one, last one. The goaltending, where do you think for Husso is kind of a learning curve this year too, and then just the way the second half season went and all?
Well, I would, take it beyond the second half. I think Billy had a very, very good season. Most games he's ever played in the NHL. The individual or personally, his numbers at the end of the season aren't good. You can go back and look at them. He's been dealing, as you know, I won't go into specifics, dealing with an injury. And I think that not so much the injury, but with kind of our plan to, at one point we weren't sure if he was going to play again. Then the plan became, hey, let's get out there and see how you do for the rest of the season. Physically, I think he did fine, but I think it wasn't necessarily maybe mentally ready to play these last couple of weeks because he's planning a completely different plan and things changed. I think the good news is, and I haven't met with him yet, is that physically he went through it okay. But as none of us have been starting goaltenders in the NHL, but I think we would all say we recognize what a tough job it is. And I think he's only going to get better for it. I think he did a really good job for beyond half of the season, for 2/3 of the season, 3/4 of the season. He won a lot of hockey games for us, and I think he'll be better for it. I think, his challenge is going to be I know what it is. How do I do this night in, night out? But for the most part, I'm very pleased with his play, and our team in the last 20 games, through trades, through injuries, we weren't as strong a lineup, and that forced him to make more saves, and at times was tough for him. But I think mostly dealing with an injury and figuring out what we were going to do and what the plan was, I don't think that made it any easier on him. But overall, I'm encouraged. I expect him to be better next year and for the experience that he's had.
Sounds good. I appreciate it, Steve.
Ansar Khan.
Yeah, hi, Steve. What do you hope to see from a couple of young guys, Edvinsson and Casper, in training camp next season? What do they have to show you to make a push to make the team?
Well, the obvious question is the answer is they got to be ready to show they can play regular. I don't want players at their age, at this early stage of their careers, simply playing minimum minutes, whatever that is, for a forward or a D-man. Training camps are it's really debatable how much you should read into them, because you're at the games, and a lot of games you'll dress a strong lineup, the other team will have a very thin lineup. Debatable how much to read into these games. And I think I look for it. Have they physically improved? Are they stronger? Are they a little bit quicker? Can they have a positive impact in the preseason games? And then if they are, then you decide, should we keep them around for a little while and play, or send them, and that goes for any player really, or do we send them to the minors and kind of start there and let them just play their way up? So again, I think most importantly, see what happens with our roster in the off season. And then in the preseason, are they the best person or the best player for the spot we're looking at? Do they outplay the other players that are vying for those spots? And if so, okay, what is it? If it's simply, if we carry 13 forwards, if they're the best 13th forward or the best 7th D, they're far better off being in Grand Rapids playing a lot. So I guess we'll see the competition, who they're up against, what our options are, and ultimately decide after preseason what kind of a role are they going to play into the regular season. That's really what we did this year with Joe Veleno, for that matter, with other players. We're debating, should they go down, should they stay, and some stayed, some went down.
And also, just how would you assess Lucas Raymond's second season?
I think it was okay. One, I think extremely highly of Lucas Raymond as a young man and his talent as a hockey player. I think he learned a lot from this year. It was a grind. Now, in fairness to him, David Perron comes in as a right winger, and the spot that Lucas played last year, David went into that role and did it quite well for us, and that forced Lucas to adapt, maybe at times play on the second power play unit, which in the NHL is a huge difference playing on the first unit to the second unit, because the first unit literally gets the prime minutes and more minutes. So I think he adjusted well to that. A new coaching staff playing, on different lines and different situations. I think he did fine. I expect him to grow from it. I expect him to be better next year, but overall, I think he played very well for us. And when I haven't had a chance to I've only met with a very few or a small group of our players. So Look forward to spending some time with him, sharing my thoughts with him on his season, what I my very few or a small group of our players. So look forward to spending some time with him, sharing my thoughts with him on his season, what my expectations are for his off season and for next year. But I think Lucas is an excellent young player who is only going to continue to get better. And in some ways, grinding it out this year is going to make him a better hockey player.
Thanks, Steve.
Jonathan Mills.
Steve, did some of the injuries this season make it difficult to assess the season as a whole, or did it maybe allow you to assess things in a different lens on the big picture sense?
I guess you lose players, some good players to injuries. It doesn't make you. It's hard to say it makes you a better team, but it gave some other players opportunity to play, and you learn a little bit more about them. And younger players were forced into maybe a bit bigger role and got to play more. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Overall, in assessing the team, I don't think it had a huge impact. We did reasonably well. We managed to survive it for the most part early in the season and had a pretty decent record. So, I'm not really sure the reason, but you look around the entire league, and maybe it's in other sports as well. I just don't focus on it as much, but like every team gets hammered with injuries now. There's a lot. You need a lot of players. You need depth in the minors. So, you just deal with it. And like I say, you call your players up from the minors, whether it's a young kid or a veteran that you sign with that purpose for being a call up, you get a chance to see them. So I guess to answer your question, I don't think it really, it did change the assessment of our team. Really didn't change dramatically kind of the things that I intended to do throughout the course of the season and whatnot. I kind of had a good understanding of what we're going to do. And, I think our team somewhat finished in an area I really truthfully expected us to be in at the start of the year.
Thank you.
Max Boltman.
Hey, Steve, when you talk about kind of the areas that you guys need to improve, when you look at the free agent pool, do you think your answers are out there, especially kind of in the age range you guys have kind of gravitated toward?
Well, I look at the group and I believe there's players there that would help us and I would like to sign. The issue is there's 31 other teams and the list isn't really that long, so that makes it challenging. And it's hard really to, I sit here today on whatever it is, April 14th or 15th. And I don't even know the date today. Somebody could tell me what day it is. I know it's Friday. That's about it. The 14th. All right. Now I forgot your question. Sorry.
Just about the free agent class as a whole.
Yeah.
Just to your needs.
So
right?
today, I sit here today. It's hard to we talk about these players. We know who they are. We kind of have an idea. These guys would be a good fit for us. Really, until July 1, I have no idea if we can get these guys or in the mix for any of them, and some of them will end up being signed prior to that. So it's really hard to plan and build your team or plan for, we're going to do this in free agency. We have spots. A year ago, at the same time a year ago, would I tell you on July 1 that we're going to sign the players? We didn't know. We knew these are spots we needed to fill, and we were able to fill them with players. And again, we'll look at it. I think it's going to be challenging in some spots because of the lack of depth at some of those positions. You can go through the list yourself and figure out what those issues are for us. I'm not going to point it all out, but we're going to have some challenges, and we're going to, as long as we continue, hopefully one of our, these younger players that are on our team now play a bigger role next year, and maybe one, maybe two of our younger players that whether they were in GR or coming from somewhere else, maybe they push into the team, but we'll slowly add to it and we'll do the best we can to fill our roster. I still want to be a competitive team next year. I want to, guys that fit the position, the type of player, and maybe most importantly, the character of the person that fits into our lineup to help with Dylan, with our entire team, with our younger players. I really like the veterans that we brought in this year. I like their attitude. I like their character. Um, uh, uh, they help their team on and off the ice, and I'll continue to try and add those type of players to help us as we build a young team that can compete for playoffs and Stanley Cups one day, hopefully.
As we sit here today, would it surprise you if you ended up being as active as last time around, whether it be free agents, trades, just kind of off season as a whole?
Max, I'll be active. How much I can actually accomplish, I don't know. Again, last year there was a lot of players, more, a bigger group of players available in free agency. There's not as big a group this year for whatever reason. What teams want to do, it's too early to say at this stage how active teams will be, like in on the other end, wanting to say I'm looking for players. How, is there going to be a fit out there? I can't answer that at this point. The season just ended, so and the playoff teams, we won't be talking to them until into June probably.
And then on the question of the kind of toughness, competitiveness stuff, I know you said you don't want to just sign a 6'6" guy to beat people up, but assuming there's someone who can play, like is that an area in personnel that would be a priority add, or would you prefer it come internally or just with guys you're already getting?
There's a lot of the word competitive. There's a lot of definitions of competitiveness or ways of defining being a competitive hockey player. Nicholas Lidstrom, again, one of the greatest defensemen ever. He was really, really competitive. Was he out there competitive like Vladdy, knocking guys down with open ice hits and whatnot? No, but he was extremely competitive, and he won puck battles. He made plays. He was there when you needed him. He didn't get pushed around in front of the net. We've got to be more competitive, and that goes in every aspect of the game. And there's a lot of areas I'd like to improve upon, and that goes with the group that we have, the guys here. It's incumbent upon them to be more competitive as well. If we want to make the playoffs, if we want to win Stanley Cups, we got to play harder, and we'll try to add different components to the team as we move along, not just this year, but moving forward. Try to add those components. And going back to my own playing career in the mid 90s, we changed the roster. We had good teams. We changed it around to bring different components to give our team more balance, and I'll continue to try and do that. But competitiveness is a very broad, my description. Competitive hockey players, there's a lot of different ways of defining it, and it can come in a lot of ways. So I've seen, it just, everybody's got to be a little bit better, and we'll try to address a lot of areas, but it's not necessarily we got to go out there and fight and beat people up. We've got to play hard.
Thanks, Steve.
Sean Shapiro.
Hey, Steve, Villy's signed for a couple of years after this, but you have UFA situation in goal. How do you address the other goaltending spot, and is Alex Nedeljkovic still potentially part of your plan?
Both Magnus and Alex are unrestricted free agents on June 30th. Potentially, yes, both could be part of the plan. I'd like to sit down with both of those young men and talk about my thoughts on their season, talk about next season. But, we talk about all the other areas of our game that have to improve. I was pleased with Billy's play this year, but ultimately, collectively, our goaltending, our save percentage in general has to be improved. Our goals against average, which isn't just an individual goaltender statistic. Goals against is a team statistic. Even goals against average or shooting percentage can be a team statistic, because and now the new one is expected goals and expected saves. Those can be, to me, not just goaltender but team defensive statistics as well. We need to be better. We need to improve in that. Can we do it? Are our best options within, including those two young guys, or is it looking at other options? Now, right now around the league, look around, we're all looking, every team is looking to, whether it be to improve in one area, whether it be their starter or backup. With a lot of teams in the league right now, where, the goaltending market is somewhat thin. So whether we go back with the same three, we need to be better. That goes for all three of them. But ultimately, as a team, we need to be better to help them out too. We can't, I think we did reduce the grade A chances we give up this year. We need to continue to bring that down, make it a little bit easier on them.
You mentioned expected goals there. How do you use things like that? How do you use the analytics like that for yourself as you make decisions for both long-term and short-term?
We look at everything. There's all sorts of statistics. Truthfully, I'm not sure what necessarily to read into them. I've found over the years we're still in the infant stages, I believe, in the NHL of what's important, what's not important, what really has bearing or not. And it takes years to decide if these things are really, really important. 10 years ago, where everybody was focused on Corsi and Fenwick. Now it's different things. And in time, we'll look back and say, this is important. That's not important, or that's important. So for myself, I guess to answer your question, I have my own, and we have internally what we think is really important to us and what we really value. And don't really care to elaborate on it just because, we'll do things our way.
Last one for me with how do you just look, obviously your job as a manager is to manage the entire organization, and it's Grand Rapids is going to miss the playoffs this year. And I know there's development there, winning and development at the same time. How do you look at how things have gone in Grand Rapids as far as it proposes to obviously the ultimate goal of building better players for your team?
Yeah, well, I look at, Grand Rapids this year. Ultimately it starts, with our management team here in Detroit, myself, Sean, our pro scouting staff, to put together a team that we think it is really important, Sean, the development of our players, but also we want a winning environment. And we didn't put together a good enough team this year. Didn't put together a good enough team last year. Now it's interesting when, we kind of in the off season or prior to the season pencil in who's going to play where, kind of think we have our depth and whatnot. And then you get a couple of injuries on the big club. You bring players up, that hurts that roster. You get injuries down there. Like what happened in Detroit really hurt Grand Rapids as well. And that be having a lot of injuries. It hurt their lineup. And then players that were slated to play there all year were injured. So it's been a very disappointing year in GR for us. We expected more. Having said that, the team we put together for various reasons, I think underperformed. One, a lot of the guys were simply up here for more time than we expected, and they also ran into the injury bug. So we'll continue to try and do a better job. We had some, positions or on the team that underperformed for us there, and we're hoping to fill those spots, whether it be with our own prospects or go out and sign some free agents that can help the team down there. But we're certainly, I speak for the organization saying we're disappointed in the season that we had in Grand Rapids. But having said that, myself and Sean, we're the ones that are responsible for it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Steve.
Carlos Monarez.
Yeah, Steve, Derek just told us a little while ago that at the start of the season, he didn't see this as a playoff team. Did you share that point of view at the start of the season, that this was not a playoff team? And did that play a factor into your decision to be sellers at the trade deadline?
Well, again, going into the season, I know people kind of, will read into whether it be media or the fan base, what we did on July 1, while we've really changed gears and we're really making a push to the rebuild is over, so on and so forth. The reality was, again, I said it then and I said it at the trade deadline and I say it now, was to get better players, to get players to help our environment, help our young players on the ice, off the ice. I think it was important. I never want to go into a season saying absolutely not. We're not a playoff team. You want your coaches, you want your players to have some hope. You never know what happens. We weren't that far out really prior to the deadline, so it was a possibility. But going into the season, did I expect us? Was the goal to make the playoff? Did I expect us to make the playoffs, Carlos? No, I didn't. Anything can happen, good or bad. You know, we've got, again, you see Vegas go in their first year in the league and go all the way to the finals, and maybe they saw it happening, but probably the rest of us didn't, and they've continued on that path. But to answer your question specifically, the goal wasn't to make the playoffs at the start of the year. And having said that, the coaching staff and the players, once the puck is dropped, their goal is to win every game, and they did a pretty good job to get there. But am I disappointed based on expectation at the start of the year that we didn't make it? No, because again, I was hoping for improvement, and for the most part, I've seen improvement in our team, and I've seen improvement in our young players going forward. Now I expect improvement in these same players for next year. Does it translate into us going from 35 to more wins? I'm not sure, but I expect our guys to be better. We need to continue to get better. These younger players have a positive impact. Our veterans continue to remain competitive, good players for us as we go forward. So.
Just my other question is just this year, you guys are going to miss the playoffs for the 7th straight year. It ties a franchise record. How much does that change, I guess, your urgency, or maybe your decision to get away from the Yzer plan patience model and maybe have more urgency to make the playoffs and take a little bit more risk, maybe at the trade deadline? Does that factor into it as far as you don't want to set the record for playoff drought?
Honestly, I'm not at all concerned, Carlos, about setting a record for a number of years out of the playoffs. The reality in the NHL, again, in a 21-team league, 16 teams made the playoffs. Now with 32, 16 are still making the playoffs. It's harder than ever. I don't use that as an excuse, but that's the reality. If you look around at some of the teams that are currently the leaders in number of years in the playoffs, you look back to where it took some of these teams a long time to get into that position. They were the Detroit Red Wings at one point, where we're at today. What I would love to make the playoffs next year. Absolutely, it would be such good progress for us, and I hope we make the playoffs next year. But I'm not going to do anything out of desperation. I'm prepared to do, whether it be sign anyone, to make a trade, whatever, to make us better. But I'm not going to do it out of desperation. And ultimately, I've got to decide in any move we make, is it the right thing in the long term? Is it the right thing in the short term? And I would love to come up with a great idea or find something that gives us a better chance of making the playoffs next year. But I'm not going to do anything that just gives us an opportunity gets us in the playoffs, so I can say I didn't hold a record, or I hold a record or break a record in a negative way. I'm going to keep trying to build a really good team that's going to be a good team for years to come. And I would love it to be next year, but as you know, I can't guarantee that by any means.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Bob Duff.
Yeah, Steve, obviously as GM, your job is to look at the big picture. You're starting to see, the guys that you drafted, a few of them are making an impact in the NHL. You've got a number of them now in Grand Rapids. Is that giving you optimism that, you're headed in the right direction and things are starting to come together?
Slowly, Bob. Yeah. I wish it was quicker. I wish more of these kids were we'd all look around and you wish you had more of your prospects ready to go sooner. I think most importantly is to remain patient with them, let them mature and grow up and develop as players at the right rate. Try to have a good environment for them, whether they remain in college, remain in junior hockey, or finally turn pro. To be patient. Some of them are moving in. Again, as I started off, or I spoke earlier, is I wish we had more of them coming. And ultimately, try to have a lot of draft picks. Try to get a lot of prospects, because some you think are going to really turn out for various reasons don't, and you get surprised by others. So I'm optimistic with some of our guys, and truthfully, I was hoping for more from some of them. And doesn't mean they're written off or whatever. It's just, it's kind of, it's not always just linear that they go from the draft to, good junior players, good college players, right to the NHL. There's some ups and downs, whether that's just in physical maturity or injuries. It takes time, but and they don't all pan out the way you hoped.
Along those lines, Elmer Soderblom obviously made the team out of training camp, and looking at numbers, he certainly tailed off and didn't have a strong second half in Grand Rapids. Are you still feeling good, like he's part of the future?
I think he has potential to be part of the future. Yes, you look back at the start of last year, he had a pretty good training camp, and again, the initial plan was. And it's easy to look back now and second guess yourself all the time. But coming out, the initial plan was, Elmer, all those guys will go down. Jonathan Berggren another year in GR. Jonathan started in GR. Elmer had a pretty good impact, and we thought for the role that we're looking for, he would do fine. I'm not sure exactly what point, but close to the midpoint of the season. He wasn't playing that much, and we sent him to the minors just to play. Other guys were playing, and then he got hurt, and he really hasn't played much since. So, again, we'll see what his off season's like. Have a good idea of what he is as a player. Is there room for growth? Absolutely. I still think he has tons of potential. And we'll see how he does in preseason. Again, if he's not ready at the start of the year and he's not going to play a significant role, he can go to the minors. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world for him. I look at, there's several players going around the league that kind of bounced around for a while and finally found their way at 23, 24, 25. So, with his size in his hands, I think there's a potential real NHL player. Can he do it over the course of an entire season? I hope so, but again, he was slowed a little bit by injury when he went to the minors, and these things happen. And going back to why it's not always a smooth process of getting them to the NHL. But I still hold out hope for him. And is it next year? I'd like it to be, but I can't guarantee it. And he's going to have to really. My message to him and a lot of the players there as the season winds down in Detroit and GR is, guys, just because you might have finished the year here or finished the year in GR, don't assume that's where you're starting next year.
Thanks, Steve.
Kevin Allen?
You might be on mute, Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin, you're on mute.
Try it again. Okay, there we go. It's not like you didn't warn the fan base, Steve, about how long it was going to take. You obviously had experience. You knew what was going on. But, when you look at like this season, starting with the free agent acquisitions, you can probably make a case that most of those guys did what you wanted them to do or exceeded that. Guys like Mata really stepped up, and Perron got a lot of goals and everything. And then, Wallman, stepped up and played a bigger role. Your younger players are coming in. Like, it feels like you've had, a lot of good things happen in the rebuild, and yet it's just been a tough sled. You're, incrementally improving. Does it times seem even harder than you thought it was going to be to, make the progress you want to make?
Yeah, Kevin, honestly, it's an emotional roller coaster. It's an emotional roller coaster for our fans. I understand that, myself included. There's days you walk out of the rink and you're like, you know what, I'm real happy with the way things are going. The young guys in GR playing well, your prospect in junior or college is having a good time. The team's played well. And then 2 weeks later, you walk out of the rink and you're like, oh my God, like there's no end in sight. What I try to do is just stick with it. I appreciate you asking the question, because we sit here, there were a lot of good things this year. Absolutely. A lot of good things. And again, through the trades we made at the deadline and the injuries to the Rasmussens and Fabries and other guys in and out down the stretch, we sit here today and somehow feel disappointed. But if I look at the big picture, I'm confident we're going in the right direction. I wish it was. Wish we were farther ahead. Everybody wishes we were farther ahead. Every other organization kind of in our spot feels the same way. So there are a lot of positive things, and our younger guys are growing and playing well. They're maturing. Maybe their stats, weren't as what we'd maybe projected or hoped at the start of the year, but it's part of the process that they're becoming more mature hockey players. They're becoming men. They're learning to deal with some of the adversity. So I do think there's a lot of good that came out of the season. The veterans, the free agents that we signed, good stats, bad stats, whatever. I really like them as people. I like what they brought to our team. And not only did they help us this year, I think they're going to help us next year and moving forward as well.
And then finally, I just wanted to ask, we put a lot of emphasis obviously on Casper and Edvinsson because they're, feels like they're closer. But, guys like Lombardi, Mazer, Wallander had decent years this season. Just in general terms, can you talk a little bit about the progress they've made as, your draft picks?
Yeah, well, we'll start no particular order, but Carter Mazer had a real good year in Denver. Second year, they won a national championship a year ago. Had a good year this year, and decided to turn pro. We signed him, and he's been played a half a dozen games in GR, and he looks like a real good prospect. Is he ready to play next year? Maybe, maybe not. But he looks like a good prospect. He looks like an NHL player for me. He skates well. He's got good hands. He knows where to go on the ice. So he's going to be on our team, and I think he's going to be a real good player for us sooner than later. Is it in September or October? I'm not sure. Amadeus Lombardi had an awesome year in Flint. He's really a good little player. He's very creative. He's a very competitive guy. If he's 5'9", 5'10", 170 pounds, that doesn't matter. He's real competitive. Is he in there running guys over, knocking guys out? No. But you know what? He drives to the net. He somehow gets into the corners first. He makes plays. He's very creative. He's a very entertaining player. Can he take that to the American League or to the NHL one day? I hope so. He certainly has the ability to do that. He's going to have to adjust to playing against bigger, stronger, faster guys, but had a really good year and is a fun player really to watch. So we really hold out optimism for him as to be one of them guys that's on the smaller side that just has it to be an NHL player. Time will tell, but kind of excited at the potential that he has. William Wallander had a real good year. He's developed very nicely over in Sweden. He's got a lot of work to do. He's over here right now. He's played one game. He's dealing with an injury. So would have liked to have seen him play a little bit more. Expect him to be back over here next year. But he's worked hard and come a long way. He's got a lot of work to do still to be, but he is a prospect. His skating has really improved. His puck handling and play. He's got the one that was in a very good program in Rogala in Sweden. And, we got Nick Cronwall and Nick Lidstrom close by watching them and working with them to the extent that they can. But he's developed nicely. He's maturing as a young man as well. So we have optimism for him. We talk about Simon and Casper. They're good prospects. I'm not sure when they're going to be impact guys in the NHL. Could be next year, but it may take some time, but we're optimistic. We've got a group of them coming. I hope to see one or two of them next year, but if we don't, I think they're coming sooner than later.
Thank you, Steve.
Will Birchfield.
Hey, Steve, a lot of eyes on Andrew Kopp this season after the deal he signed last summer. Beyond the offense, when you're watching him play, how do you measure his game, his effectiveness, and I guess how would you evaluate his first season here?
Overall, pretty good. When a play I wouldn't call that he signed a 5-year contract. You know what his AAV is. With that comes expectations, at least production wise. You can debate whether met those expectations, at least in your eyes, or not. But he's a very, very good two-way hockey player. He does a lot of little things extremely well. He was very, I would say in fairness to him, got off to a bit of a slow start. He had a surgical procedure in the off season, which delayed his ability to train and to skate. but came in. I really like his hockey sense. I like his durability, his flexibility as far as being able to play all three forward positions. As the year went on, I thought he had a bigger and bigger impact. He was very good on our penalty kill, a very good defensive player. I think Derek mentioned to me this morning, he was one of our, maybe our only plus player, and he played a lot of hard minutes. I think he's a very good playmaking centerman. I think he only ended up with 9 goals. That would be the one statistic that we would all look at and say, geez, he needs to score more. Ultimately, I didn't necessarily sign him for his scoring ability. I signed him for his all-around play, his flexibility. So I'm pleased with the year that he had. And I think we can count him in for, if I'm penciling guys in for X number of goals next year, I think I'll pencil him in for, more than the 9 that he had. Is it 12, 15, 20? I'm not really sure. But overall, I think Andrew had a very good season for us and contributed in a lot of subtle ways that really don't necessarily wow you, but is a very good player and a very useful player. And I'm very happy that we have him on the team.
Thanks, Steve.
Last question, Art Regner.
Hi, Steve. I don't know how much time you've had to take your own deep dive into the 2023 draft, but would you agree with what seems to be the general consensus is that this is a very, very deep draft class?
I find we talk about really, really deep drafts when there's somebody special at the top. And if there's not somebody special at the top, it's just another draft. So I think it's a really deep draft.
Because Connor Bedard and Adam Fantilli are that good.
Maybe amongst others. Yeah. I think today we sit where we sit 9th and is potentially 17th with the Islanders pick. We don't know who we're getting at that point. Maybe we get some luck in the lottery, maybe not. But regardless, we have ideas where we're going to pick if we stay close to where we're at today. And at least in the first round, we're very optimistic and we're excited about the options that we think we'll have at that point. So overall, I think it's a pretty good draft. But again, Art, once you get by those top guys in any draft class, and some years they're not there, we don't get as excited about the draft. We being, I guess, the hockey world,
Right. I mean, I understand that. The reason I'm asking you is because you have 5 picks in the top 45 in this draft. Do you find your position going into this draft is one of strength, meaning that, okay, I might draft 5 guys, but maybe I can move some of these guys? I mean, do you have maybe a lot more options because of the number of high picks you have in those first 2 rounds?
Well, I would say we theoretically could have more options. Ultimately, today, I don't really have any options because I haven't talked to anybody about anything. So right now we have five picks, as you say, 2 in the first round and 3 early in the second. And Chris Draper and our amateur scouting staff continue to be out there watching all the leagues that are playing and watching the players that are playing to have a good handle. And we have our list together and just having preliminary discussions with them throughout the season and looking at the lists and having a chance myself to watch a lot of the players, particularly the kids higher up on the lists. We feel pretty good about it. But yeah, having more, they're all assets. The draft picks are assets. Your prospects are assets. Players on your team are assets. So the more assets you have gives you the more flexibility to potentially do something. Really, once the trade deadline is over with, the non-playoff teams or the teams that acquire all the picks are focused on watching the amateur players, and the teams that were the so-called buyers, they're focused on making the playoffs and the playoffs. So we'll start to once as teams get knocked out and you get closer to the draft, then you start to talk to other teams and see what, if any, options you do have at that point. But certainly these picks are assets and very valuable assets. And, we've used in the past, right or wrong, we've used some of our draft picks to acquire players. And, again, last year, giving up a early third round pick for Ville Husso, I was pleased with that move, and we're still able to continue with our process or our plan of trying to draft and use our draft picks to get prospects. Every now and then you need to get some players too, and I think we'd all agree with our picks. We'd rather have a player than a draft pick. Maybe not necessarily the first or second or third or whatever this year, but players are known quantities, and our draft picks they're unknown. So if you can get a player, you try to get a player.
Steve, Sebastian Cossa, I know at the beginning of the year, was he going to go back to junior? Was he maybe in GR? And you decided to put him in Toledo. Can you talk about Sebastian and the year he had? Maybe struggled a little bit, but seems to have finally taken that step.
I think we're all very pleased with Sebastian's season to date. Hey, he struggled early in the season. We decided to leave him in Toledo because we knew he was going to get a lot of starts and it was going to be a challenge for him. What I could really say is his attitude has been unreal. Like he's a worker. He relished the opportunity to go to Toledo and play a lot. He's worked extremely hard. He's a worker in practice. We talk to our coaching staff in Toledo on a regular basis. His attitude has been excellent. His determination has been excellent. And his play has continually improved throughout the course of the season. They have a very good team in Toledo. He's got competition in the net, which is good for him. And, we hope Toledo has a good playoff run, and we hope Sebastian is an important part of that. But I'm really pleased with his development, his progress throughout the season. One, hey, it was great for him to struggle early, and that, he had to battle, and he battled and he worked hard, and there was no excuses, no feeling sorry for himself, no pouting. He just went to work every day, and he continues to get better, and we just hope he continues in that with that mindset and continues to get better as a goaltender.
Great. Hey, Steve, one more question about Sebastian. Is the plan then maybe next year to take the reins and be number one in Grand Rapids? Would you like to see, and then perhaps a year from now, he could be knocking on the door here in Detroit?
The plan is, I think he's playing tonight, Art. And we'll reevaluate after tonight. How's that?
Okay, well then I'll hold you to it though.
Yeah, you know what, Art? Going into next year, if he's the best goaltender to play in GR and grab the reins, so to speak, or be the starter, then he'll be that. If he's not ready for that, whether he's a backup there or he plays in Toledo, we'll let it play itself out. One, I think he's a good prospect. Two, I think he's really determined, and we're just going to let his play dictate where he goes. And when we see him in Detroit, honestly, your guess is as good as mine at this stage. I think he's shown that he's a good prospect. Is next year, is he ready to play in the American League? I hope he is. Maybe he will be. Maybe he won't. But as long as he's going in the right direction, that's all I worry about.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right, those are all the questions we had for Steve. Thanks everyone for joining us today. And Steve, thanks for the time.
Yeah, my pleasure. I appreciate everyone's. One, for our fan base, the support we got this year was outstanding. And for all of you, appreciate you being here today at the trade deadline, and the coverage that you give us. It's very important. So once again, thanks a lot. And we'll probably talk close to the draft.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Steve.